SML, what's up? We're back. Heat Check is here yet again. I'm joined by my normal co-host Bomber. We are in a pretty good spot with weekly shows, so we decided we'd take this SML favorite and go over the big dance, a little playoff action. So how are we doing today, Bomber?
Oh, I'm good. I'm ready to jump into this. The game isn't very much fun right now for me, but we'll just jump into shows and do as many as we can.
Yeah, you've been sliding a little bit, but I have a feeling you're gonna recover. You're still gonna make a pretty good playoff push. That team is dangerous, and obviously when you're rolling, you're one of the best players in the league. So I'm not super concerned about you.
Well, what a great segue into our first segment of our playoff predictions. So last year we did last cycle now. Last cycle we did our kind of walkthrough of a pick'em on how we thought the playoffs were going to go. It's a little early now, but I think we've got enough of an idea that we can maybe figure out how these playoffs are going to go. So let's start let's just get the NFC out of the way. It's boring as hell, so we'll start with them. All right, so the NFC. So right now it looks like we've got Dump is the 1 seed, QP is going to be the 2 seed, Paulie the 3, the NFC East the 4. Whether it's Grams or MYT, we don't know yet. It's tied up right there. I think Grams has the advantage right now, but they play this coming advance, so we'll see how that one goes. Right now we have in the 5 seed Seattle 10-4. We've got Clink right now in the 6 seed, but he's going to get jumped by Future, and he'll drop down to 7. Future will jump up to 6, and there's a couple bubble teams. We've got the Vikings, who just lost big to the Bears. We've got the Panthers, who've been struggling, somehow made it to 7-7. And then we've got Washington also with 7. So I think we're pretty safe saying that those top 7 that are already there are probably the 7 it's going to be. I kind of looked at their schedules and figured they're all going to have 7 losses. It looks like Seattle's got to lose out in order to have 7 losses.
Right.
Clink can only lose 1, and Future can lose 2 to get 7 losses. But I think those are going to be the 3, because for any of the other ones to jump them, they got to win out and then win the tiebreaker. So I think let's go with those 7 as our guys. So we've got Arizona and Dump. He's going to have the bye. So that means our first matchup is going to be the Lions taking on the Bears. Who do you have in this one? They'll have faced twice before the playoffs. I feel like it's going to be QP.
Yeah, and I believe they split in the regular season. I think Future is one of those losses for Q, but it was the first time they played. I believe the second time they played, Q came back, got the win. I can fact check that. But,
yeah, he did. So it was 31-17 in week 4, and then and that was Future, and then it was 20-10 Lions in week 12.
Okay.
And the week 4 game, I'm going to pull it up right now because I want to make sure. But yeah, he still had Jared Goff that week.
Okay. So yeah, that's a big difference. Yeah. Obviously, Herbert has really changed things for Detroit. Ever since getting in, he has been.
Oh, and you know what?
Pretty much one of the best in the league.
We're actually, it'll be according to this 7, it'll actually be QP and Clink. I forgot we have the Bears jumping.
Yes, the I believe so, Bears jump Saints with obviously some games left to go.
Yes. So either way, I think personally, I think QP is the number 1 team in the NFC. So I don't think it matters out of the 2 which one. He would obviously have a little more familiarity with Future. Future would also have the same familiarity though. So I'm going to say playing Clink. I think it's going to be the Lions pretty easily. I think QP right now is kind of head and shoulders the best team in the NFC.
Yeah, I would agree that Q is my favorite, even above Dump, who's the 1 seed currently. If he plays Clink, obviously very similar styles. They played each other tight. They were in each other's division last cycle, so there's a lot of familiarity as well. I just think right now Q is just kind of on another level. When you watch his games, his offense is fluid. He's really got defense figured out.
Yeah.
I can't believe the amount of pressure he gets with the Detroit Lions defensive line. So clearly he's doing something well. So I think regardless of who he plays, and Future doesn't have an easy schedule. He still has the Giants and Vikings left. So we could see him drop one, end up back in 7. But regardless of who it is, I'm taking Q in the first round.
Yeah, definitely like Q in the first round. And he's doing this with the Lions, which is the most
Yep.
impressive part. I mean, you look at the rest of this list, the Cardinals, the Bucks, the Cowboys, the Seahawks, the Saints, and maybe the Bears are kind of down there with the Lions, but even they have Justin Fields, Allen
Yep.
Robinson, Khalil Mack. So there's something there. You look at that Lions team, there's nothing there. I mean, he's got Herbert now. That's it. Hawkinson, I guess. So it's pretty impressive. I think the NFC may be in trouble when he starts using these draft picks in his cap space and builds a team.
Yeah, his stock is sky high for sure.
Yeah. So we'll have QP advance in there, and then that means the next game is going to be the Buccaneers taking on the Bears. Future against Pauly. We saw it how many times last year with the Raiders and the Dolphins, and now, first playoffs, it looks like it's going to be the Buccaneers and the Bears. Future and Pauly again. Who do you have in this one?
Just seems to be fate.
So
So I believe these teams played each other as well. Yeah, in week 7, and Future actually got the win in that game, 28-27.
Yeah.
So that's and wow, Future had a heck of a day. 16 for 22, 252 yards, and 4 scores to no picks with Justin Fields. This is an interesting one. I actually just played Pauly. Obviously, I believe it was 2 advances ago, and then he just played Clink recently. So he's had a tough schedule. He's playing well. He's very good at defense. He disguises a lot. Obviously, the talent on the team is, probably near unmatched in the rest of the league. Offense is very good, high powered. I think in a playoff game, Pauly schemes up a little bit. He knows what to expect from Future. I think that gives him a little leg up. I'm gonna take Pauly in that one.
Okay. I think I'm gonna do the same. Future's playing really well with Justin Fields.
Yeah.
His defense is giving up a lot of yards, but I think Pauly, just the way he plays, and he'll be ready for a playoff time. I don't know. Maybe he's got a lot going on right now. That's why he's dropped a couple uncharacteristic games. But I think when it comes playoff time, he'll get back to studying. He already knows Future pretty well. Might be some changes with having Fields and a more mobile quarterback. But talent-wise, he's got the far better team, and I think that'll show come playoff time. So I'll take Pauly as well. All right, so far we've got all the favorites advancing, but then that brings us to our 4 versus 5 game where that 4 seed is usually not the better team, and in this case, whether it's Washington or Dallas, I think that's I think it becomes a toss-up. Even though Seattle's sitting there at 10-4, with the last 3 games for Seattle, and I know this upsets Nolan, he gets all in his feelings, but I'm not sold on Seattle being back, and to face NYT or Grams is tough. They're 7-7. I know he's 10-4, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for him to have 7 losses going into this game. But I do think he's got probably the better weapons than Washington. Jordan Love has just been awful for NYT. Grams hasn't been playing that great with Dallas. So I'm going to give this one to Noel if he's in this spot, unless he has 7 losses. If he has 7 losses and they have the same record, I'm giving it to whoever comes out of the NFC East. Because for him to have 7 losses means he dropped the last 3 games, which were his chances to beat winning teams, which will be Future in Week 16, QP in Week 17, and Dumb in Week 18. Kind of a murderer's row there, but it's also a chance to finally get a win against the winning record team. So we'll see how he does.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because I've been looking at the schedule here, and for the Seahawks, pretty much all of the losses have been to playoff or playoff contending teams. He's got a loss to the Saints, he's got a loss to the Steelers, and a loss to the Vikings. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see him with that test. I think the NFC East is the best one of these division winners to play if he ends up in that spot. I think if he plays Grams, he can get a win. I think if he plays NYT, it might be a loss. So it'll depend on, kind of who ends up in that spot. I'm not sure what their schedules look like.
See, and I think for NYT to end up in that spot, he would end up having a winning record. Oh, maybe not. Right. I guess he doesn't have to, but Noel does have a win over NYT, I believe. So
yes, he does. He handled him.
So that would be a win over a playoff team. But like I said, if Noel has 7 losses come playoff time, meaning he dropped the last 3, then I'm going with the NFC East winner.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a safe bet. I think I'm actually going to take Noel though. I think he gets the one. I think
Okay.
he gets one win over whoever gets the NFC East. I'll take him, and then we'll see what happens the next round.
All right. So going off that, then that means Dump would come in the second round, and he would have uh, either the 4 or the 5 seed, because we've got the 2 and 3 moving on. So
Yep.
it's either going to be Noel or it's going to be the NFC East, and I don't think it matters. I know Dump's had his struggles in the playoffs, but realistically, I'm not sure he'd be playing a playoff team in that first round. So I think Dump rolls through that first one, and then we see crazy Dump in chat because he gets a playoff win. So I'll take Dump in that first round.
Yeah, if Dump loses this one, the narratives are going to be just absolute, just raging. It's going to be bad. It's going to be ugly. We might not see Dump for a month and a half. It won't be pretty if he drops this one. I think he's going to be heavily favored. His team will be much better. His offense is flying. I would be shocked if he dropped this one. It would take kind of a miracle, I think.
Yeah, again, I just don't see it happening. So then that leaves 2 and 3, meaning we would have Paulie against QP. And again, I think QP top team in the NFC, even with the roster difference there. I just think QP is just playing on another level right now in the NFC, and I'm going to give him the win over Paulie.
Yeah, it's scary for the NFC that this, I feel, going into the season, we were talking about QP and how he's going to be dangerous in the NFC, but maybe not for a season or two. Well, it's season 1. Q is 11-3. He's rolling through teams. He might just be dangerous just from the outset. Paulie's going to study hard for this one. He's going to be prepared. He's going to have the team advantage. But I think at the end of the day, I got to take Q. I think we definitely see a Q and Dump NFC Championship game.
Yeah, and then so that's exactly what we've predicted now is a Q and Dump NFC Championship game. Dump clearly the better team. I mean, Kyler Murray, X Factor. Well, I think it'll be X Factor after the season, but he's got X Factors and superstars all over. QP's playing with the Lions, but QP just beat him pretty good. I know it was a 7-point game, but I was talking to QP earlier today. He thought at 21 he had to start running on first and second down, and that kind of allowed Dump to get back into it. He didn't realize it was 28 points before he had to do that. So he kind of took his foot off the gas a little early, and I think it cost him because had he been able to put up another score, that may have been it.
Yeah.
I think QP takes it again. Dump came into chat kind of upset about how QP beat him and the Under the Hood show exposed him and it was conspiracy that it happened right before their game.
Is that what that was? I missed it in chat this morning. I was asleep.
Yeah, you missed it. It was pretty good.
I got to go back and read it now.
So I think QP's kind of in his head and he's going to win it again, and QP's going to be in the Super Bowl with the Lions.
Yeah, that's what we've seen from Dump is that, he can get a little in his head. He panics a little bit. His game changes in the playoffs. I would like to see him get past that. I think it would be, good for the league, good for the NFC if we can start to see him kind of move, take that next step. But I'm certainly not going to predict it with with bragging rights on the line here. I'm going QP. He's just playing too well right now.
Yeah, what I do think though is right now the way the NFC looks though, I would expect QP and Dump in every AFC championship, at least one of them, but
Yeah.
more than likely both of them, unless they somehow meet before the AFC championship or NFC championship because Paulie runs away with the South, and maybe one of those two gets tested. But right now, the way it sits, those are the two best teams. And I'd be surprised if anybody else meets in the championship game.
Yeah, it's certainly top heavy for now. Obviously, we have a couple teams that are going to need to dev up a little bit. Maybe D-Muse can get the Vikings in shape. You'll have to see what happens with Paulie as they start to get older. Klink is a good team builder. We'll see what he can do with the Saints despite limited funds. But right now it's for sure a top heavy conference, and they're your two best teams for sure. And Q's is only going to get better. And honestly, Dumps is pretty young too, so it's definitely gonna be them pretty often for early.
Yeah, looking at the on the bubble teams, you've got Minnesota, Carolina, and Washington. Um, the only one on there that really is a surprise has to be DMU's. Um,
Hmm.
Previously been to a Super Bowl, and to be 500 right now, he's got to do something about that quarterback position. But if he gets that figured out before that team gets too old, he may be able to do something. He was uh, kind of benefited from that Carolina team last year. He came into a pretty good situation, and
Yes.
we'll see what he can do with this Minnesota team. But he's a team that could surprise some people and maybe replace one of these seven next season. I don't think so much this season though.
Yeah, another sleeper team for next season could be looking at Green Bay. Obviously, now that that news has
That's
officially
true.
broken and broken all of our hearts, depending on who takes that team over and from Primer, or if I mean, you never know when an old SML member will come back. But depending on who that is, that's a team that I guess is gonna have two firsts because of the Jordan Love trade. Maybe
Yeah.
something can happen there. They can make a push, but we'll see.
Yeah, and that could make that a tough division with
Yeah.
QP future D-Muse and then a to be determined Green Bay owner would be a pretty good top four. So we'll see
Shout
how
out to
that works
Gouda. You
out.
can get the brotherly rivalry there with Q and Gouda in the same division. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, got to say that's what I'm pulling for is a QP Gouda rivalry at the NFC North. Maybe it'll make the NFC a little more interesting. Although
Yeah, there you
dumping QP tried today, so we'll see.
go. Prime, give the people what they want.
That's right. All right, so that's our NFC. Let's see what we've got in the AFC. So in the AFC, we've
Hell,
got
we have hell in the
yeah,
AFC.
we've got you at number one. We've got me at number two. Prime at number three.
Oof.
The AFC South at four.
Well, they tried.
It's a very similar situation to the NFC. We've got a 10-4 team at five, a 10-4 Jets team at five, Dolphins at six. I think they may flip flop because I believe Meats swept DW, so
Hmm.
he'll have the head to head tiebreaker. So Meats five, DW six, and then a 9-5 Charger team. Dan right now sitting at that 7 seed, but right below him you've got the Raiders at 8-6. Baltimore at 7-6. They're going to get a force win today to be 8-6, and then you've got Pittsburgh at 8-6. Pittsburgh going to have a little rough go of it though. They still got Prime and me, so the 2 and 3 seed both to go through. With six losses, you got to think they're going to at least have seven before
Yeah.
that's over with. Baltimore though, they only have six. They could still make some noise. And the big one to watch though, between that 7 and 8 seed. So Dan lost to RD early in the season when he was the Raiders. The Raiders play the Chargers week 18. If Dan
Wow.
wins out and the Raiders win out, that week 18 game is going to be essentially a playoff game. Um,
Wow, that'd be crazy.
and even if
Just
Dan
when you think
wins,
the AFC can't get more interesting, it continues getting more interesting. Sorry,
even if
NFC.
even if Dan wins it, I'm not sure he's in. Um, well, no, he'll win if he's in. Yeah, never mind. They'll because he'll have seven. So yeah, completely off on that.
Yeah,
That
wouldn't
is
it,
a winner in.
just as long as he gets the 2 games before it, which
Yeah,
is
he's got to
Fins and
win out up
ZZ.
to that point. If they're
If he
tied, I'm
drops
not
one to
sure.
Fins or ZZ, you can just boot him from the playoffs.
Yeah, yeah. So it's gonna be interesting. That Week 18 game could end up being a big deal if the Raiders can get there still with only six losses, and then
Yep.
obviously Dan as well. So let's jump right into that. Then it'll be as of now, you'll have the number one seed in the bye, and I'll be playing Dan. And this is kind of two teams moving in opposite directions. He started off 0-5 and has run the table 9 games straight. And I started off, I think, either 10 or 9 or 10-0, and now I'm sitting at 11-3. I think if it comes down to it, I think Dan's got the advantage there.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see the argument. Obviously, you're sliding. He's hot, starting to figure out the game. And once Dan starts to figure out the game, it gets a little dangerous. The 2 seed for sure for you is a curse this season with Dan starting out as poor as he did. That's just really bad luck.
Yeah, of the 3 wild card teams, that's the last one I would want to face.
Yeah, you just want nothing to do with that 7 seed, which just seems against common knowledge, but it's just awful. Um, it's such a tough one to call. You guys always play close games. I
Yeah.
think he's had maybe the slight advantage over you, but you did beat him earlier this season.
Yeah, it'll depend what Browns team shows up.
Yeah,
Well,
Yeah, really all it takes, I mean, if you start getting pressure in that game, the whole thing changes. If Garrett and Clowney are going nuts, that just gets so difficult to play against. You get a little momentum on your side, and from there, it just snowballs. It obviously depends on whether that happens. You've got 3 games to kind of find your way here. I tend to think you're going to do it. I'm gonna take you in the first of what could be many playoff battles between you and Dan.
Yeah, I'm still going to take myself.
There you go.
As long as Nick Chubb isn't hurt, I think
Yeah.
I'll be I'll be okay in that game. So we'll say I'm moving on there. That brings up number 3 against number 6. I know Prime wants it to be Chiefs Dolphins, but the way it's looking right now, it's going to be Chiefs Jets, and they've actually played a couple times in the playoffs last cycle. Uh, DW, one of those teams that's kind of surprised me a little bit. I had him pegged for like 9 or 10 wins coming into the season. Just looking at his schedule, you kind of figure that'd be where he would kind of fall. But he's got wins over guys that I didn't expect him to get wins over when he beat you. Wasn't counting that one. Of course, I think I was counting him beating Mike. So
Yeah. Yeah, you could flip flop those and be okay. But
he's another one that I think he's got a tough schedule coming up. I think he still has you. He has Paulie, I think.
yep.
So that's another one that's going to be tough to finish out 10-4 and only improve. I think he may drop 2 more games. He may actually end up being the 7th seed. But the way it looks, he should be in. And really, actually, if he loses 2 games, you still have that Ravens team sitting there with 6 losses. But we'll say he's at 6. If he's playing Prime, I don't think it's going to matter. Prime seems to be heating up right now, and he's playing really well on defense, which is surprising. He's got like 3 of the top guys for the Defensive Player of the Year, just intercepting everybody.
Yep.
So I think it'll be Prime over DW and pretty easily, actually.
Yeah, I mean it's playoff Prime. He obviously plays different. He takes the game much more seriously. Everybody always likes to make a big deal over Prime's early season losses, but at the end of the day, he's shown he just doesn't care. He just has to get in the playoffs, and then you see a different Prime start playing. And against DW, I just think DW's offense is a little too stale to beat Prime and to keep up with the Chiefs. Obviously, if he can run the ball and hold the ball the whole game, he's got a shot. But I'm just not sure that's going to work against Prime in a playoff game. So I think DW is getting better every season we see him play. It's been fun to watch, but I think this season 1, there's no shot you can pick against Prime there.
Yeah. So that brings us to the second bye of the playoffs. It would then be Meats playing the AFC South. I don't even know if there's much to say. The AFC South winner may have 10 losses. So I'll take whoever's the 5 seed over the AFC South until they prove they can win a playoff game.
That's a safe bet. I mean, if there's any wild card team that I think would be capable of losing to the AFC South winner, I think it could be Meats, especially if he's playing against Coop, who has a good amount of speed in the secondary. They can jump and hawk down those Jalen Waddle streak routes, but I'm not sure that I'm confident enough in Jacksonville even getting there in the first place with DW and Mike and old Chipotle order on the schedule still.
It seems like every time I see a team in the AFC South that looks good, I'm like, all right, this is going to be the team that's going to pull away this year, and then they go and lose to one of the other teams horribly, not even close. So they're just going to be kind of a filler spot, I think, this year. We'll see what they do next season.
Yeah, if I had any kind of guarantee that Jacksonville would be in that spot, maybe I'd think about it, but I don't have that guarantee, so I'm taking the 5 seed.
All right, so then that would make the number 1 seed Bills against Meats, and you guys would meet for a 3rd time. And I think it would be the same result as the first 2 times. I don't think it would be close. Right now, your team's playing at an entirely other level. We saw Paulie keep it close for the first half, and then it just got out of control. And I think, it's tough to beat somebody 3 times in a season, but when you beat them so bad the first 2, I think that 3rd time won't be that hard. So I've got you easily going in over Meats.
Yeah, I felt this happen quite a bit previously in the last cycle. You play a guy in the regular season, have to play him again in the playoffs. It's always a little difficult, but I think right now I'm feeling good. I have my team in a good spot. It's coming together. I'm feeling better on defense every game, which honestly is the biggest part. So, I'd have to pick myself here.
Yeah, I don't think that's even remotely favoritism or a homerism. I think that's just facts.
The only thing to watch out for is that game will be played in Buffalo, and if it's a snow game, let me tell you, I'm one of the worst Madden players in the world when it comes to snow games.
Yeah, yeah, that's gonna be tough. The elements could change
I need
anything.
my stadium built ASAP.
I got mine in the works, so we'll see.
Yep.
All right, so that would make 2 versus 3, the Browns and the Chiefs. I got Prime's number earlier, but like I said, he's kind of heating up, and I'm going the opposite direction this time. I do have Prime beating me. I just think his defense, the way he's playing defense right now, is so good. I think we're gonna have a Bills Chiefs AFC Championship.
I mean, I would certainly have fun. I would definitely enjoy playing him. And I'll be honest, I will probably end up regretting these words. I would rather play his team than your team. I think that you with Chubb and with that defensive line can give me a ton of problems. And the Chiefs don't necessarily have that big running threat. Obviously, you've got Mahomes and Hill, which is a whole different problem. But I find it personally easier to win shootouts than having to stop Chubb from getting a zillion yards every time he touches the ball.
Yeah,
So I do think Prime can beat you in this one. He's just, like you said, he's hot. You're struggling a little bit. He's playing well on defense. He's just got so many weapons. I think Prime takes this one, and I think I get a little sigh of relief.
yeah, I think it'll be a fun game. I'm looking at these AFC playoffs. I mean, outside of the AFC South game, I think it's going to be a fun playoff to watch. I think almost every game could go either way. So I'm excited for that. But Prime Faz AFC Championship would be a good one to have, as long as the results weren't the exact same as the first meeting, because that got ugly quick.
I mean, I wouldn't hate if they were the same.
Yeah, if it does come down to that, I think it's still going to be. I think it's going to be the Bills and Lions in the Super Bowl. Prime's playing well, but man, that game just kind of sticks out as being really bad. And until he can put up a result that's different of that, I think that's the way it's going to go again.
Yeah, I think I have to agree with you. I think for sure Q. I mean, I always prefer to pick myself. I don't like going into things not confident. Certainly not guaranteeing a victory. It'll be a difficult game against Prime for sure. But for the sake of continuity, I'll stick with myself here.
All right, perfect. So that makes it. We had the same picks pretty much for all the games. I don't think we really disagreed on any.
Yeah, mostly the NFC 4-5 game. I think I could see going differently, but
yeah, that's the one that really stands out.
Yeah.
So all right, so that's it for the playoffs, and I believe you have some news you'd like to put out.
I do. So we've been working on this for a little bit. I've been teasing things with the old Matthew Berry Twitter account, fake Matthew Berry, obviously. But we are officially going to be launching SML Fantasy Football, and the first go around will be for the season 1 playoffs. This will be our first chance to really see it, test it out, which I'm very excited about. So we wanted to on this show kind of announce it, let everybody know what was going on. Give a breakdown how it's going to work, and then we're going to cover just some strategy things, maybe some sleepers, some guys we might fade. So yeah, we'll jump into that. Basically, how this is going to work, and if you don't fully pay attention to this breakdown, don't worry. I'm going to be sending a PM to everyone individually, but this is all built up in Google Sheets. And how this is going to work is it's going to be for any of you who are familiar with best ball fantasy. Basically, you set a lineup, and that's your lineup the whole way. There's no changes. You don't trade players. You don't add players. You don't set lineups. Basically, you just pick your roster with a salary cap. You'll have $120. Each player in the SML, obviously, playoff teams only, will be available, and each one of them has a salary assigned to them. You'll build a lineup through those players, through those salaries, stay under the cap, and then like regular fantasy football, as they do in our SML playoff games. You will get points. Those will all be totaled up automatically. I'll be entering stats, and then it'll total fantasy points from there. And the winner will get a Heat Check sponsored $25 gift card, Amazon gift card. So no buy-in. There's no reason to not do it. Everyone will be sending me lineups. So I'll get those entered and done. Regular fantasy scoring applies. It'll be 6 points for all touchdowns, 0.4 points per passing yard, 0.1 point for a rushing or receiving yard, half a point for a catch, minus 3 points for interceptions as well. I believe that's all of the scoring categories. The lineups, we're going to go bigger for playoffs since there's less teams to pick from. So for playoffs, you're going to have 2 quarterbacks, 3 running backs, 3 receivers, 2 tight ends, and 1 flex player, which can be any of running back, wide receiver, or tight end. And again, you'll have $120 to build that lineup through the salaries given on each player. So that should be, and then obviously this is just going to be total points. There's not going to be head-to-head matchups each week. It's just whoever gets the most points is going to win. So that's the full breakdown. Bomber, do you think I missed anything there?
No, that sounds good, but I think maybe we should, I don't know, give people some of our sleepers and maybe some trap guys that we want to avoid. What do you think? You got any sleepers you want to throw out there for everybody?
Yeah, absolutely. So my first one, I'm going to be going to the NFC here, going to New Orleans for Isaiah McKenzie. He was a guy he picked up, earlier this season through a trade. I have him slotted in right now. He costs $5, so he's a cheap option. And there's a couple things to think about when building these playoff lineups. Obviously, maybe not the best guys are always going to be the best fantasy guys. And you also have to think about you can't change these lineups. So these are guys that if they play one game and lose, you're only getting 1 game of points out of them. Clink right now in his spot, he's sitting at the 6 seed. He could end up the 7. If he ends up the 7, I think he becomes a little more dangerous to rely on for fantasy. But if he ends up the 5 or the 6, which is still within the realm of possibilities, he has a better matchup in round 1. He could easily win a game and end up playing at least 2. And Isaiah McKenzie's been a good part of his offense, costing you only $5 and gives you plenty of room to then load up on some superstars. So, I think that Isaiah McKenzie is a nice little, sleeper wide receiver there to throw in your lineup and, give you some flexibility elsewhere and get a couple games out of him.
All right. So my first sleeper is going to be Tua Tagovailoa, Meats quarterback. He's only 10 points right now, which if you look at the top quarterbacks in the league, that's pretty much a value because he's right up there with Allen and Mahomes. And he's only 10 points. He's half their cost. Meats, if he does get that 5 seed, he'll be playing the AFC South. So he's basically guaranteed at least 2 games, including 1 against the AFC South. So he should be able to put up quite a bit of passing yards. Hasn't really been running the ball a lot. I think he's got almost 1,000 yards, maybe a little over 1,000 yards with his running back committee. So most of his damage is going to be through the air with Tua, and for 10 points and an almost guaranteed 2 games, I think that's a good sleeper right there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm sticking with the wide receiver position for my next sleeper. Looking at the Los Angeles Chargers with Dan Chisena, which I think I'm saying that correctly. I might not be. I've honestly never heard of him. I just know that he's really fast and speed kills in Madden. And obviously, when you've got somebody like Dan throwing to him, that's always a recipe for success. It remains to be seen where Dan is going to slot in. As far as the seeding goes, I think the 7's probably the most realistic spot. And with Dan, obviously, the 7 seed's not ideal, but he's a guy that, you can just as easily see going to the Super Bowl as pretty much anybody else. We've seen him do it before. We've seen him get hot. He game plans well. He studies well. So this is a guy that, Dan Chisena you can get for, pretty relative value here. Looking at his price, he is, as I find him in the list, he is at $7, so a little more pricey than McKenzie, but he doesn't have superstar abilities. He's not an X factor. I believe he's still just normal dev. So he's somebody that is really just rated there for his speed, but that's something that Dan can use. And if Dan makes a Super Bowl run, Shazana is going to get a ton of points for a very low cost.
Yeah, and that's kind of a big thing to look at with some of these sleepers is how many games they'll get.
Yep.
Now, my next one probably will only get one game, but he's surprised us before and won some games that maybe we didn't think he would. I'm going to say Kareem Hunt at 12 points. As much as DW uses Kareem Hunt, he may not get a lot of yards per carry, but he gets a lot of carries and he gets a lot of touchdowns.
Yep.
So I think Kareem Hunt for 12 points is a huge value there, especially considering some of the other running backs that are going to be on the list. I would take Kareem Hunt as my number 2 sleeper.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a huge part of DW's offense. He's a guy, especially when we go, for season 2, this is going to be a season long build. He's a guy that should be, very high on people's lists for that. I'm going to look quarterback for my next sleeper, and he's probably not going to sound like a sleeper, but it's Justin Herbert, obviously in Detroit. We just talked about how, we would be pretty surprised if Q doesn't make a Super Bowl run here. Herbert is expensive at $17, but he is not, due to his lack of superstar abilities, he's not an X factor. He is not the same price as the top tier guys. Your Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray are all at $20. So you save $3 with Justin Herbert, and you probably get a guy who's a near lock to go to at least the NFC Championship game, and also doesn't have the first round bye. So you're probably looking at a guaranteed 3 games from him, which could make a huge difference.
All right, so my number 3 guy is another running back, Chris Carson out of Seattle. If Noel does end up being for real, he's got a pretty easy matchup in the AFC East or NFC East. He should be able to get a win there. And Chris Carson's only coming in at 7 points, or $7, whichever I'm calling them points. But
either one works.
It's going to cost you seven of something. And that's a huge value. That'll allow you to get one of these bigger guys like a Mahomes, an Allen, Diggs, something like that. If you're only using 7 whatevers at your halfback position. So Chris Carson is definitely a sleeper to look at.
Yeah, so I'm going back to receiver, staying in the AFC. I've got Philip Dorsett, just yet another speed option on the Kansas City Chiefs. He's only at $5, so instead of spending the 17 or the 15 on Hill or Hardman, you can get a piece of that Chiefs offense. He only needs one big play. It would be a shock if Prime only played one playoff game, so you should get multiple games out of Dorsett. He's at a cheap cost, and then you can. If you're only spending $5 on Dorsett, you can just add Tyreek Hill anyway, and you can just have the whole the whole Chiefs offense.
Yeah, and Dorsett being a sleeper is actually part of why I have Hill over on my other list. But you stole Dorsett from me on my sleepers, so I'm gonna steal a guy from you, and we'll go with your halfback, Devin Singletary. I'm not sure of his price, but I know it can't be that much because he doesn't have a ton of yards.
$3 because he's garbage.
He is bad, but he scores touchdowns, and so I think if you're looking to load up on some of these high point value, high dollar value names, you got to add a couple small ones that you hope can have big games. Dorsett may not have, or not Dorsett, but Singletary may not have the biggest of games, but he's probably one of the more likely guys to have 2 to 3 games with a relative amount of comfortability that you're going to get multiple games out of him. Guy like Carson, you may only get 1. Dorsett's probably a guaranteed 2, maybe 3 games. So I keep saying Dorsett, Singletary, but I think he's going to rack up enough points to make it where he ends up being worth it, especially since you're not spending a ton of draft or whatever points, dollars, whatever on him.
Draft capital. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so same thinking for me. I'm sticking with the Chiefs here on Raheem Mostert. Basically, my thought process of it is that I would like to load up on the cheaper Chiefs because they're going to be playing a lot of games, and then that lets me splurge on some of the bigger name guys. So Raheem Mostert, he's at $8. He's probably not going to get you a ton of yards, but if he punches in a touchdown or 2 per playoff game, you're looking at solid amounts of points for relatively cheap costs, and that gives you just a lot of flexibility in your lineup. I also forgot to mention one thing when I said that. This playoff contest will only be open to SML members who did not make playoffs. That way there's no conflict of interest. I don't know of anyone in the SML that would actually be throwing games for SML fantasy purposes, but just in case we're going to eliminate that, and this first SML fantasy football contest or playoffs, it will be non-playoff owners only.
All right. Well, then my last sleeper is going to be Scottie Miller, the wide receiver out of Tampa Bay. We've seen Paulie use him quite a bit, but he's dwarfed by names of Mike Evans, O.J. Howard, Chris Godwin, all these big names on that Tampa Bay offense that have all come in at 15 or higher or right around there for their dollars, point value, whatever. Scottie Miller only 5 points, and Paulie loves to use this guy. He's his number one receiver for receptions. Every time you play him, you got to watch Scottie Miller, and I think he's going to have a big enough game or two that 5 points is not a lot to spend for a guy that's going to give you a lot of production. I think he could just as easily score as many points as Tyreek Hill, who's going to go for over 3 times his value.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. So that's going to take us to our traps or our fade plays. Guys that look sexy, high point values, but maybe you don't want them. I'm actually going directly to my team and dogging one of my own players here, but I'm going to say Stephon Diggs. Is that high-rated X-factor receiver, a lot of speed. He's incredible. I love using him. But he's rated the highest you can be as a receiver on the list. He's $17 value, and with me, I just kind of spread the ball a little too much. He doesn't have those huge games that Tyreek Hill can have, that some of these other guys in the league have. He's not super high on the yardage leaderboards. So I just think I use too many guys. If you're going to spend $17 on a receiver, I'd probably look towards maybe Detroit or maybe Arizona.
Yeah, I could see something like that. But I'm going to go with Tom Brady as my first one. Now I know we said, or I said, Scottie Miller at 5 points was a good sleeper. He could have a lot of points. But Tom Brady's coming in 15 points or $15 he's going to cost you, and his first game is likely to be against Future, who's given Paulie problems before and knocked him out in the wild card round. So for 15 points, I'm going to want a little more guarantee of more than one game, or I'm going to want somebody cheaper. So for that reason, I've got Tom Brady as my number one guy to avoid.
Yeah, it's a smart call. I'm sticking with quarterback as well. I'm looking at Arizona with Kyler Murray. Like I said, he's a max price quarterback, $20, very expensive. If you're going to spend $20 on a quarterback, I want to guarantee that I'm getting a lot of games out of them. And unfortunately, with Dump's playoff woes, that is just not a guarantee. If you were guaranteed 3 games out of him, he's worth it. But anything lower than that, I think it gets difficult. And God forbid Dump loses his first game. You spent $20 on a max quarterback, and you get 1 game out of him, which probably wouldn't be that good if he's only playing 1. So I will pass and take that chance elsewhere.
And it's actually leads perfectly into my second one, which was actually Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb coming in 20 points. I believe he's the only running back at 20 points.
Yep.
And judging by his season totals, more than worth 20 points.
Yeah.
However, if I don't get by Dan in the first round, if that's who my first round matchup is, he may have a decent game. But if I lost, it probably didn't have that great a game. And to drop 20 points on the running back position could really handicap you, especially if you don't get a second game. So I would avoid Nick Chubb.
Yep. So, similar logic here going to be used for my third one. I'm looking at NFC East. Ezekiel Elliott. Right now, obviously, the NFC East winner's kind of up in the air. You could use this on pretty much any Washington football team player you'd like. You could swap it with Terry McLaurin if you want. Basically, the thought process is the matchup's probably not going to be great in round 1. If you're going to spend money on, an X-factor receiver, an X-factor running back, using Elliott as the example here, I want the guarantee of multiple games, and I don't know that you're going to get that out of the NFC East. I would much rather take my money over to, the Chargers and take Austin Eckler instead, a similar type player. But I just couldn't justify the 17 on Zeke for potentially 1 game.
Yeah, and that kind of is the exact same reason why I have my next guy, Alvin Kamara. He's 17 points as well. Clink could be another one of those one and done guys. And right now he's under 1,000 yards rushing with him. He does have 14 touchdowns, and he's his leading receiver. But for 17 points, I think you can find better value than Kamara, especially a guy that's going to probably be one and done. I think for one game, Chris Carson at 7 points will probably get you similar numbers.
Mm-hmm. So I have Jalen Waddle as my next one, obviously receiver for Miami, the most expensive of the group at $15, and Meats just does not have that consistent passing offense, especially in big games, to where I would feel comfortable spending the 15. I could certainly see spending maybe 8 on Devontae Parker, taking that chance there, but 15 on Waddle. You're just really hoping basically that he hits one of those slot streaks that he likes so much, which might end up getting getting exposed on Under the Hood or a similar type show. So yeah, I think I'd be staying away from Jalen Waddle. If I'm going to the Miami offense, I'm going a cheaper player.
All right. So speaking of cheaper players, I would want to go cheaper than Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill coming at 17 points. Prime probably going to get a lot of games, at least a couple games. Got to figure he's going to win that first round game, whether it's DW, Dan, or Meats, whoever he ends up in the wild card round. And then he's going to play me, and I've given up a ton of passing yards anyway. So Hill would be good, possibly. He's going to get a lot of yards or a lot of games. However, with Hill, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games where he's been under 50 yards. So Prime's not force feeding Hill. He's taking whoever's open, and if Hill's taken away, then he's not going to throw to him. Of those games, he's got 3 games under 10 yards. Against the Raiders, no catches. Against Dallas, 1 catch for 8 yards. And against Denver, 1 catch for 8 yards. Games you would think that he would have no problem kind of pulling away. He's not even using Tyreek Hill. So for 17 points, you run into the possibility of him not even using Tyreek Hill for 1 or more of those games. It's just too much to spend on one receiver.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's actually exactly why I'm looking for my last one, New Orleans with Michael Thomas. This is a guy, if you haven't watched Clink very much this season, you might be tempted to go over to that 95 overall X Factor receiver. And then you take a closer look, you see 87 speed, and you see the fact that Clink barely uses him at all. He only has 3 touchdowns on the season, multiple games with 0 catches, multiple games with 1 catch. Actually, his best game on the season was this most recent game, which was 3 receptions for 63 yards and a score. If that's the best case scenario, I want nothing to do with spending, high amounts of money on him, which currently his price tag is sitting at $12, which is better than most of the other X Factor receivers, but I'm not spending $12 on 3 receptions for 60 yards and a score.
Yeah, that's pretty high. And another one, and it's kind of a trend. The bigger name guys maybe are the ones you want to avoid. I've got DeAndre Hopkins. He's not even the number 1 receiver on his team. So for him to be 17 points, I would take Christian Kirk. If I'm dead set on taking somebody in that explosive passing offense that Dump has, it would be Christian Kirk. 17 points for Hopkins is just too much, especially he's not even his number 1 target. He likes him on the streaks, but Kirk is the guy that he hits the most, so that's the guy I want, especially if he's going to be cheaper than Hopkins.
Yeah, and this is probably going to be your last chance to get Kirk at 15. Once I update the prices in the offseason, Kirk's going to get that superstar bump. He's going to probably end up similar price as Hopkins anyway after this season. So might as well take advantage of that gap while you can.
All right, so those are our sleepers, maybe our players to avoid, the breakdown of how the SML fantasy is going to work. And with just under an hour, we're at about 10 minutes left. Let's talk about the draft that's coming up, because not everybody's going to be in those playoffs, and then the other half of the league can't participate in SML fantasy, but maybe something everybody can kind of take in this draft coming up. One thing I kind of see happening, and Tiny did it last year, and I thought it was a mistake. We talked about it actually on Heat Check, and he went ahead and did it anyway. Tiny, you got a quarterback. You don't need to draft a quarterback. You have 3 first-round picks. And this kind of goes for everybody that's contemplating a quarterback, and maybe you have something decent there and you've got some draft capital. and maybe for some guys it's going to make sense, draft a quarterback and develop that quarterback, and you'll have somebody good. Maybe you get like a Josh Allen or something really good. But for some of the guys, if you're throwing 30, 40 interceptions as it is, are you really going to develop that quarterback? Maybe, and if that's what you want to do, go for it. But at least think about maybe using some of that draft capital and building up what you're good at. If you're a good running team, like for example Matt, he's decided he's just going to stick with Haskins and use his draft picks to build up the rest of the team. He's good at playing defense and running the ball. Why waste your picks on a quarterback if that's not what's going to make you competitive anyway? Like Tiny, I use him because he's got 3 first-round picks. What Tiny could build around Jalen Hurts and just that offense and defense using 3 first-round picks that are all going to be pretty high, I think. He's got Mike's, he's got his, and I think he's got Meats, if I'm not mistaken. So he's got 2 pretty good ones and then one that should be in the 20s. You could put together a hell of a defense, give Hurts a ton of weapons, which he's already got some decent ones. So really the defense you could build up and have probably the top defense in the SML within 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah.
And then just kind of live off the defense. Don't make mistakes with Hurts, because whoever you put at quarterback, you're probably going to throw 40, 50 interceptions. So does it matter? Why waste the draft capital on it and build up what you're good at? So I picked Tiny because he had the most picks, but if you're out there thinking about drafting a quarterback and you're already not doing so well with your quarterback, kind of ask yourself if you're really going to develop that quarterback or if it's just going to be another rookie that turns into 40, 50 interceptions. And unless he starts a superstar, he's never going to get there. So maybe you want to build up somewhere else. I don't know. What are your thoughts on kind of the draft?
No, I wholeheartedly agree. The thing with quarterbacks in Madden is that it is, the polar opposite of the NFL. In the NFL, if you have the chance to get, your franchise guy, you take it every single time because he can come in and change around your franchise. That's a great concept and a great idea in Madden, but the problem is that no matter which quarterback you have on your team, you're the one controlling him. So if you are not that good at controlling said quarterback, having a better or worse one's really not going to make much of a difference. So, it goes against regular football team building logic, but, Tiny, obviously, Jalen Hurts is not that good. The arm is not there, but, top of the interceptions leaderboard at 44, next closest is 35. That's top of the leaderboard. That's not going to change too much with many other quarterbacks. That's, reads, progressions, all that. So, there's really no sense in using that draft capital on a guy that, realistically, is he going to do that much different than Hurts? No, not really. I would, if I'm Tiny, for sure, I'm using those picks on defense, maybe replacing some of that old offensive line. I'm changing my offense a little bit. I'm going to play a ball possession game. I'm going to utilize Hurts' legs, and I'm going to play defense and, hope that carries me through. I think, for as much as we've all made fun of Matt for sticking with Dwayne Haskins and being insistent on that, I honestly think it's a smart call for his team. What he's doing. So I personally would, hate my life if I was using Dwayne Haskins every week, but Matt's making it work at 8-6. He develops the team a little bit more. We can definitely see him in this playoff chase, even with Dwayne Haskins. So,
what kind of
do what you're good at.
Kind of what you just said. You said you would hate your life, but that's because you're a passing team.
Exactly.
So it's kind of just the opposite side of the coin here. You're not going to go out just because you don't have a 99 overall halfback. Just ignore your passing game and get you a 99 halfback just to have one.
Yeah, you better believe running back is pretty low on the list of Buffalo Bills targets for the offseason, despite the fact that I average like 12 yards a game on the ground.
Yeah, so that's kind of my point, is if you're a passing team and you don't have a quarterback, you're right. You need to get a quarterback and do something. But if you're a guy that's already throwing 50 interceptions and that's your problem, figure out some other way to win games. If it's your defense, if it's your running game, build those up, because just drafting a quarterback to end up blaming him, 2 seasons down the road or a season down the road, and then you end up having to sign a veteran to a big contract, like I don't know, Carson Wentz the next season for $30 million after you just picked a guy number 2. Um, it just doesn't make sense. You have all that draft capital, use it to build up what your strengths are, and maybe some people just you need to kind of look at yourself and figure out what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and
Yep. And I will say the flip side of that is if you are a team that needs a quarterback, you like passing. I'm looking at Pauly. If you've got a shot at a guy, I wouldn't wait. There's a lot of teams that are going to be in the market. There's a lot of teams that can need guys. Looking at somebody like D Muse, if you're not 100% sold on Kellen Mond, I wouldn't be waiting. If you have a shot at getting a good guy, I would take it.
yeah. So that's just kind of getting up on our soapbox about the draft. I know Tiny's still going to probably package all 3 trades, move up to number 1, take the best quarterback, and hate him a year later. But
it's SML tradition.
Yeah, maybe someone else will. If just one person it saves their draft, then I guess we did some good here. But all right, that's been it for our one season episode of Heat Check, and I'm assuming maybe we'll do this again next season. I know
That sounds good to me.
You've got Romancing the Stone or whatever.
Romancing the Stone. There you go. That's what it is.
So you guys will have that. Sounds like you got another episode planned. So Heat Check maybe just a once a season thing, and we got a new look here now too. So
it's all about quality, not quantity.
That's right. That's what I've heard. I tried just the quality, throw a bunch of shit against the wall, see what sticks. So we'll go our separate theories on what works. But all right. So until next season, then this has been Heat Check.